What's your real appeal to their fans, do you think? I mean, do they think of you as rebels or what?
How ugly looks.
I think the appeal is mainly the same as any other pop artist. It's just they like the way you look and they like the way you sound. That's all there is to it.
What is happening, everybody? Trey here, and today at Reactions to the Classics, I'm going to share with you 10 things I learned after listening to every Rolling Stones song, album, outtake, B-side, whatever the Stones created from the 60s until now. I gave a spin, and oh man, I'm so excited to talk about arguably the greatest rock and roll band of all time. So, with that said, y'all, I am also going to be sharing my top 10 songs and their vast catalog, as well as ranking every album, including the recently released Hackney Diamonds. The Stones are still out here putting out some good music, man. 6+ decades later, incredible. But with that said, it is the Rolling Stones Legends series. I'm glad that you were stopping by today, and let's just get into a little bit of the quick facts of the Rolling Stones here. And it's so tough to condense 6 decades of band history into a bite-sized piece, but I did my best here, people. And so let's go into it, man. The Stones, if you don't know, have sold over 200 million records and are one of the highest-grossing live acts of all time, on top of coming out with some of the best songs and albums in rock music history. The origins, though, of them date all the way back to 1950, where Keith Richards and Mick Jagger became friends. Keith Richards, of course, the guitarist, Mick Jagger, the lead frontman and singer. After reconnecting in 1961, Richards noticed Jagger carrying Chuck Berry and Muddy Waters records, and they shortly thereafter formed their first band called the Blues Boys. After jamming with multi-instrumentalist Brian Jones, keyboardist Ian Stewart, and drummer Charlie Watts in the spring of '62, Richards and Jagger combined with them to form the first iteration of the Rolling Stones, named after a Muddy Waters song that Brian Jones had seen on an LP. Jones really was the leader of the group at its origins there, and named the band. So cool little trivia note there. They played their first show in July of '62, though Charlie Watts wouldn't officially join them until January of '63, and they added the great Bill Wyman as their bassist. These early shows were dominated by blues covers, and in May of '63, they signed their manager, Andrew Loog Oldham, who was a driving force behind that gritty bad boy look that the early Stones had, and the marketing behind that. They signed with Decca Records then, and their first single was actually a cover of Chuck Berry. He's popping up all over here, people, and the song Come On. They started to increase their popularity in the press while becoming the first band to appear on the legendary British music variety show Top of the Pops. Oldham also encouraged Jagger and Richards to write their own songs. They released their first album in '64, scored their first #1 with the cover of Bobby Womack's It's All Over Now, and then had their first US tour in that summer. Popularity continues to go. The British invasion is happening, people. Come 1965, they had their first US #1 with the classic I Can't Get No Satisfaction, and started a string of #1 albums and songs on both sides of the pond. Their first fully original material album, Aftermath, was released in 1966 and saw the band expand their sound with various instruments. Here you have songs like Paint It Black, Under My Thumb, Mother's Little Helper. Also, demonstrated the maturation process from Jagger and Richards as well, delving into more personal and deeper topics than your fare of the day, right? 1967 saw the band cut ties with Oldham, and manager Alan Klein took a more dedicated role with the group, while hits Ruby Tuesday and Let's Spend the Night Together showed their continued staying power. Jagger and Richards were raided by the police in February of 1967, and Brian Jones's girlfriend Anita Pallenberg left him for Keith Richards. Obviously, that caused a bit of a turmoil between Brian and Keith at the time. Brian Jones himself suffered a raid on his house and had drug charges brought against him in May, with all charges boiling down to fines or overturns for everybody in the group. But that would not be the last time members of the Stones ran into some problem with the law. The band finished '67 by releasing the psychedelic hodgepodge of Their Satanic Majesty's Request, which was a bit polarizing upon release, but in my opinion is a fantastic psychedelic record. 68 saw the release of the legendary single Jumpin' Jack Flash, and leaning more into the country and blues that started their classic period, I think, with what a lot of people point to with the release of Beggar's Banquet. Brian Jones's unfortunate drug use had increased to the point of not being able to tour. He was effectively kicked out of the band by Jagger and Richards, and in July 69 he was found dead at his home after drowning in his swimming pool. One of the famous members of the unfortunate 27 Club. Mick Taylor was brought in as a new member. They performed in Hyde Park 2 days later in front of 250,000 fans. The end of the decade saw another highly successful release in Let It Bleed, and of course its song Gimme Shelter and You Can't Always Get What You Want. During this time, tensions with the record company Decca and their manager Alan Klein reached a head, and they formed their own label, Rolling Stones Records. 1971 saw the release of Sticky Fingers, which went #1 on both sides of the pond, and the creation of their iconic logo. This is the first time the people had seen the famous tongue out with the lips. They famously made their own mobile studio and fled England due to taxes in 71 as well. Next year, they saw another #1 album with the release of their epic double album, Exile, on Main Street. And then Goat's Head Soup in 73 also went 1 on both sides of the pond, and they had more commercial success with It's Only Rock and Roll in 64, which is the year that Mick Taylor unfortunately quit the band, as the band's tax issues and drug use made touring and creating a bit more difficult. Ronnie Wood joined the group in 74. They continued a string of successful tours in the years following, and in 78 they released Some Girls to great success. 1980 saw Emotional Rescue reach #1 on both sides of the pond and showed that the Stones were still popular a couple decades into their career. Tattoo You, the hit Start Me Up, and I mean, if you've seen the video, you can see Mick in the skin-tight, purplish V-neck that he was in, and again was a success on both sides of the pond. Jagger and Richards during this time, though, started to have a bit of a riff creatively. And by the mid-80s, Jagger was focusing a little bit more on his solo career, and Richards as well put out some albums towards the mid to late 80s. They were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 89. The same year they had their comeback album with Steel Wheels. Bill Wyman left the group in 91 and saw bassist Daryl Jones help the group on 1994's Voodoo Lounge, and he continues to tour with them to this day. The Voodoo Lounge tour was the highest grossing tour ever at the time, and they became innovators as they were the first major group to broadcast a concert over the internet in 1994 for about 20 minutes. I can only imagine how clear and crisp the sound and video quality was a year before I was born. That's pretty iconic, though. They close out the 90s with Bridges to Babylon, and they continue to have great touring success in the 21st century. They released A Bigger Bang in 05. They set another touring record for that album tour, making over $550 million. They continue to have much success to this day. Just released another #1 UK album in Hackney Diamonds a couple weeks ago. Charlie Watts unfortunately passed away in 2021, and you have Steve Jordan taking over those drumming duties on tour. So man, we're left with Mick and Keith still as the heart and soul of the Stones right here all this time later, and they're still out performing to this day. So now I'm going to transition into 10 things I learned after listening to the Stones' incredible catalog right here. Starting with the beginning, with their roots, man. I love the fact that the Stones paid respect to the foundations of rock and blues and the forefathers, right? Even dating back to their first singles, which included covers from, Chuck Berry, Willie Dixon, Buddy Holly, Bobby Womack. Keith Richards also has famously noted the impact of the 20s blues legend Robert Johnson on his guitar playing, and also, blues greats like Muddy Waters. So I love the fact that they always paid their respects to those that came before them, and instead of stealing from it, they made it their own and paid respects to the legends. Also, another thing I learned, Brian Jones's contributions, I think, in their early days is a bit underappreciated in current musical discussion on the group. He was their leader. He gave them their name right. He was key component as well of really driving that dual guitar sound that is so authentically Rolling Stones with him and Keith back in the day, which later became, of course, a hallmark with Mick Taylor and Ron Wood whenever they joined the band. He also played a lot of unique instruments like the sitar, marimba, even some keys, harmonica, and really I think helped influence the band a bit in that 60s period. He reminds me a lot, honestly, of a Syd Barrett, right? Somebody who started another legendary band, and Pink Floyd was a bit of a driving force in those early years, and then unfortunately, faded away before the humongous success and history of the band continued to go forth. But man, I just wanted to share some love to Brian Jones right there. They wouldn't be the Rolling Stones literally without him. So that was a real treat to go back and hear all of his contributions. Another thing I learned, man, as somebody who has heard the classic Stones period, I was impressed with how many non-album singles there were, especially in that 60s period, that were just so phenomenal. And, I never heard. And it's really a testament, I think, people to the difference of how music was, right, in the 60s. And the Beatles were, of course, famous for doing this as well, where you have classic songs that weren't even on the LP, right? We're going to put a single out, and you're going to go buy the single, get you hyped for the album, but we want to deliver something new for the album as well. Nowadays, that's really not the case for a variety of different reasons. But songs like Get Off My Cloud, Jumpin' Jack Flash, of course, I Can't Get No Satisfaction, As Tears Go By, 19th Nervous Breakdown, Let's Spend the Night Together, Child of the Moon, all legendary songs and great singles. And if you want to listen to a compilation of these, man, check out the 1989 release of their London singles. That is right up there with Past Masters by the Beatles, I feel, as a compilation. Another thing I learned is, man, what a great group to have just such variety in such a short amount of time. Able to pull out blues, rock and roll, obviously, that psychedelic music, rhythm and blues, pop, country. I could listen to the Stones pull off any of those styles because they do all of those styles so well, and yet still add their own unique, distinct sound and flavor to that music. I think it's an ultimate testament to the legendary songwriting duo of Mick Jagger and Keith Richards. Another thing I learned is the Stones were just as good, if not better at times live, man. Get Your Ya-Ya's Out is one of the greatest rock and roll live albums of all time. And Jagger in particular, I think, had a way of coming alive, showing that charisma, that passion, that pure sex, drugs, rock and roll ethos whenever they were able to get on stage and just let it rip. No pun intended, man. There's a reason that they were billed in the late 60s as, quote, the greatest rock and roll band in the world. I don't think there was any lies told there, people, at that time. Another thing I learned, man, and I might be stretching it a little here, but I just have to shed a little light on their logo, right? I mean, it's got to be the greatest logo in music history for a band. If you think there's one better, let me know in the comments. But I think it really sets the stage for their persona and the music there within. Obviously, a lot of the Stones, adjacent album cover work, and it has a bit of that sexual drive and energy to it, and I think their logo, does that in spades, and it's just iconic. You see it on T-shirts everywhere. People will be wearing shirts with the logo that probably don't even know a Rolling Stones song, of a younger generation. But man, it is legendary. Another thing that I learned is, man, they really surrounded themselves and had a great ear for incredible musicians who always seemed to fit right into that Rolling Stone sound. Of course, in their classic period, we had the greats like Nicky Hopkins and Billy Preston on the keys, but we actually have Daryl Jones, as I mentioned, Steve Jordan, Bobby Keys, Bernard Fowler on backing vocals, Chuck Leavell as well has been with them for many, many years, and it's the Stones just have a great way of being able to complement their sound, recognize whenever, hey, maybe we need a little boost here from this person's talent, or let's add this person in, let's get this person in the recording studio. I think that is a talent, obviously, in and of itself. as a band and leading what sound you want. Another thing is their classic run from Beggar's Banquet to Exile on Main Street is, of course, an all-timer. One of the greatest album runs of all time, and that really is dubbed kind of their classic period here as we talk in 2023. However, I think this could be expanded to include not only Goat's Head Soup, which comes after Exile, but the albums from Aftermath onwards, Aftermath, Between the Buttons, and their Satanic Majesty's Request, all are exceptional, and again just show such a growth and booming period of the band really finding themselves and firing on all cylinders. And there's very, very few artists in history that I think have a 4 or an 8 album run that is as quality in a row as they put forth there. Another thing is, man, you know me, I love the Beatles. They are maybe my favorite band of all time, but I think that the Stones are much closer to the Beatles than I previously had assumed after going through their whole catalog. As a big fan of basketball, I think it's almost a bit of a Michael Jordan against LeBron James situation, right? Where MJ, didn't have as long as a career, had just that booming success, an absolute icon, the most popular of all time. Whereas, LeBron James or your Rolling Stones, right? They have that longevity. They have, that, incredible success as well. It's just a little bit of a different flavor, if you will, man. It's really cool, though, to hear songs like We Love You and Dandelion from 1967, where John Lennon and Paul McCartney of the Beatles were on backing vocals for that. And at the end of the day, I'm sure both groups really laughed to the bank about their supposed huge rivalry, right? And that ultimately just probably made them even more money and birthed even more fervent fans. If fandoms are any indication nowadays with social media and people getting behind their favorite groups and artists, I can only imagine, the same thing kind of applied in that 60s time period. No, man, I'm a Stones guy. Nah, I'm a Beatles. Hey, I as it stands here, I appreciate and love and thank them both for all the great music that they produced. And finally, last thing, overrated, underrated, properly rated. We do this little segment on every Legend series, and I mean, no shocker. I mean, the Stones are properly rated as one of the best bands ever, whose quality of music, their commercial success, their influence, longevity really do make them one of the greatest artists of any era, any genre, man. And those are the 10 things I learned. Now, time to go to my album rankings. Hopefully you don't throw too many stones at me. Yeah, people, I'm having the puns coming today. Coming into this, Sticky Fingers was my favorite, and you know what? On re-listen, it still is. That's a perfect rock album right there. An easy 10 out of 10 for me. I have Beggar's Banquet going next, Let It Bleed, and then Exile. So yeah, the big four are still my top four, but I really, really do love Goat's Head Soup as well, coming in for me at 5. Aftermath, then Some Girls, Their Satanic Majesty's Request. Tattoo You might be a little higher for some people, coming in my top 10, and then rounding out with Between the Buttons. I'm going It's Only Rock and Roll. Voodoo Lounge is a record that, again, is really, really strong. But it's hard to top the top 10 for me, man. I have their newest release, Hackney Diamonds, man. I'll tell you, that one really surprised me in a good way. I think that was a very strong album, and it's coming in middle of the pack here. Then I got Out of Our Heads, Emotional Rescue, Steel Wheels, not as high on that as many people are. Bridges to Babylon, which is probably their most underrated album in my estimation, as well as Blue and Lonesome, their 2016 album of blues covers. I love the production on that one. Then I got Black and Blue, Undercover, A Bigger Bang, Rolling Stones number 2, The Rolling Stones, and coming in dead last, I have Dirty Work. No offense to the Dirty Work lovers out there, man. It was just easily for me their worst record. But hey, man, it was the mid '80s. Things were different, man. But now to my top 10 songs, which is such a difficult task. In no particular order, I got Painted Black, I got Sway, Sympathy for the Devil, Under My Thumb, Beast of Burden, Mother's Little Helper, I love that melody there, Street Fighting Man, and the iconic Charlie Watts drumming performance, Give Me Shelter, nothing more needs to be said, Shine a Light, and Moonlight Mile, the closers from Exile and Sticky Fingers, respectively. I thought the Stones are legends at just being able to open and close an album in a great way. Look no further than Let It Bleed, right? With Give Me Shelter, and you can't always get what you want. But that, my friends, in a quick little nutshell, is the Rolling Stones. Please let me know your album rankings, your thoughts on the Stones, your favorite songs. etc. in the comments. Love to hear from y'all, and want to just appreciate all the patrons and the people that help keep this channel going. They voted. It was against the Stones and the Beach Boys who would be next. The Stones came out on top, and we'll have another poll up over on Patreon right now, man. If you want to check that out, let your voice be heard there, and we'll have another legendary artist featured in the next month or so. But please be sure to check out our other stuff in the Legend series as well. We covering everybody from James Brown to Madonna to The Cure, The Clash, etc. I'm really excited to continue expanding this Legend series out, and want to hear from you. Any suggestions you have, of course, let me know. If you liked what you saw, hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe button. You can also check out our Patreon page, as well as another video you might like here at the end screen. But that'll wrap it up from me today, y'all. Long live the Rolling Stones. Thanks so much for watching. Happy listening, and until next time, I will see you.